Your body is dying, not in some distant future, but now, right now. Your organs shutting down one by one, while doctors stand helpless, telling you there's nothing more they can do. That was my reality 3 years ago. Stage 4 lymphoma, 6 months to live. Every conventional treatment had failed. But here's what they didn't tell you, what they couldn't tell you, what mainstream medicine refuses to acknowledge. There's a force connecting every cell in your body to every other particle in the universe. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Quantum physics has proven it exists in thousands of laboratory experiments. Ancient mystics called it the divine matrix. And I discovered how to use it to heal myself when nothing else could. What I'm about to share with you will change everything you know about healing, consciousness, and the power sleeping inside your own body. This knowledge has been suppressed, hidden, kept from you by institutions that profit from your illness. But you're different. You're here because some part of you already knows there's more to reality than what they've told you. You're ready to discover what quantum entanglement really means for your health, your mind, your life, not as theory, but as a practical technique you can use today. You've felt it, haven't you? Those moments when you thought about someone and they suddenly called. Times when your body signaled danger before your mind could rationalize why. Unexplained shifts in your energy that doctors dismissed as stress or imagination. These aren't coincidences. They're proof that you're already entangled with the quantum field, already connected to forces that conventional science won't admit exist. The truth is, quantum entanglement isn't just for particles in a laboratory. It's the fundamental fabric of consciousness itself. When two particles become entangled, measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. No signal travels between them. No time delay. Instantaneous connection across any distance. Scientists have proven this in countless experiments. They just won't tell you what it means for you. Because if they admitted that quantum entanglement connects your consciousness to your cells, your thoughts to your biology, your intentions to your reality, the entire medical establishment would collapse. Pharmaceutical companies would lose trillions. The paradigm of powerless patients waiting for chemical cures would shatter. You would remember what ancient wisdom keepers always knew. You are not a helpless victim of biology. You are a quantum being with the power to influence your own healing at the deepest level of reality. Great masters throughout history understood this. Tibetan monks who could raise their body temperature through meditation alone. Japanese practitioners who could slow their heartbeat to near death and return. Sufi mystics who spoke of the breath as a bridge between worlds. Christian contemplatives who experience miraculous healings through prayer. They all access the same quantum field. They all understood that consciousness and matter aren't separate. They're entangled. Modern quantum physics now confirms what they practiced. The observer effect proves that consciousness collapses quantum possibilities into physical reality. Your act of observation, your focus of attention, literally determines which potential outcome manifests. Think about what that means for your body. Every cell contains trillions of quantum events per second. Every biological process occurs through quantum mechanisms. And your consciousness is the observer collapsing those infinite possibilities into your lived experience. But here's where it gets even more shocking. The quantum field doesn't just respond to your conscious thoughts. It responds to your subconscious beliefs, your emotional patterns, your deepest programming. That's why positive thinking alone doesn't heal chronic illness. That's why positive thinking alone doesn't heal chronic illness. That's why affirmations sometimes fail. Because beneath your conscious mind, there's a vast subconscious terrain of beliefs and traumas and patterns that are also entangled with the quantum field, also influencing which possibilities collapse into your biology. When I was given 6 months to live, I didn't just think positive thoughts. I went deeper. I learned to access the quantum field through the pause between breaths. That sacred space where consciousness touches the infinite. Take a deep breath right now. Not the automatic way you breathe every second of your life. Consciously, feel the air entering your body. Now here's the key. At the top of your inhalation, before you exhale, there's a pause, a stillness, a gap in the rhythm. In that pause, something extraordinary happens. Your brainwaves shift, your nervous system resets, and for just a moment, your consciousness becomes less identified with your thoughts, your body, your story. You touch what yogis call the witness state, what quantum physicists might call the field of pure potential. In that space, you're not a dying patient. You're not your diagnosis. Your awareness itself, connected to the infinite quantum field where all possibilities exist simultaneously. Ancient traditions knew this pause was a portal. They built entire spiritual practices around it. Pranayama in yoga, kumbhaka in meditation, the hesychast tradition of Christian prayer. All of them recognized that the pause between breaths is where divine power enters human consciousness, where quantum entanglement becomes conscious, where healing that defies medical explanation becomes possible. But why was this kept from you? Why don't doctors tell you that your consciousness is quantum entangled with every cell in your body? Because the implications are too radical. If you understood that your observation, your attention, your consciousness literally shapes your biology at the quantum level, you would stop being a passive consumer of healthcare. You would become an active participant in your own healing. You would remember your power. The medical establishment isn't evil. They're just trapped in an outdated Newtonian paradigm where the body is a machine and consciousness is irrelevant. They still believe that matter creates consciousness, when quantum physics has proven the opposite. Consciousness collapses the wave function. Awareness shapes reality. The observer determines the observed. You are not a powerless victim of random biological processes. You are a conscious observer, entangled with the quantum field that generates those processes. When I discovered this, when I really understood it not just intellectually but experientially, everything changed. I began spending 15 minutes twice a day in the pause between breaths, consciously entering that quantum space, not trying to think positively, not affirming health, just being present in that gap where my consciousness touched the field of infinite potential. And slowly, impossibly, my tumors began to shrink. My oncologist had no explanation. He called it spontaneous remission, as if naming the mystery somehow explained it. But I knew what was happening. I was consciously using quantum entanglement. Every time I entered the pause, my observation was collapsing different possibilities than the ones my subconscious programming had been selecting. My awareness was no longer trapped in the story of dying. It was touching the field where healing exists as a quantum possibility, just as real as illness, just waiting to be observed into manifestation. Now, I need you to understand something crucial. I'm not saying consciousness alone heals everything. I'm not telling you to abandon medical treatment. What I'm saying is that there's a dimension of healing that quantum physics has proven exists, but mainstream medicine ignores. The dimension where consciousness and matter are entangled, where your observation shapes your biology, where the pause between breaths becomes a portal to possibilities your diagnosis said were impossible. The quantum field connects everything. Einstein proved it. Physicists have measured it. Mystics have experienced it for thousands of years. But most people live their entire lives never consciously accessing it. They breathe automatically, think automatically, live automatically. Their consciousness never touches the pause, never enters the gap where quantum entanglement becomes conscious, where healing that transcends chemistry becomes available. You've been lied to about the limitations of your biology. You've been told that DNA determines everything, that genetics are fixed, that consciousness is just a byproduct of brain chemistry. All of it is false. Quantum biology has proven that DNA responds to electromagnetic fields generated by consciousness. Epigenetics has shown that your thoughts and beliefs alter gene expression. And quantum entanglement reveals that your awareness is literally connected to every particle that has ever interacted with your body, creating an invisible web of influence that extends far beyond your skin. Your thoughts are entangled with your cells. Your emotions are entangled with your hormones. Your beliefs are entangled with your gene expression. And all of it is happening through quantum mechanisms that respond to observation. You are the observer. Your consciousness is the most powerful force in your biology, but only if you learn to use it consciously. Only if you enter the pause where quantum possibilities become available. But understanding quantum entanglement wasn't enough. Knowing the science, believing the theory, even experiencing those first impossible healings wasn't enough. I had to master it. I had to learn not just how to touch the quantum field occasionally, but how to live there. How to make that conscious observation not just a practice, but my permanent state of being. How to entangle my consciousness so deeply with the field of infinite potential that healing became not a miracle, but my natural state. What happened next defied everything I thought possible. Everything doctors said was irreversible. Everything science claimed couldn't spontaneously change. The technique I discovered is so simple, yet so powerful, that when I first share it, people often dismiss it as too easy to work. But simplicity is the signature of truth. Quantum entanglement operates through the most fundamental laws of reality, and the method to consciously access it must be equally fundamental. Stay with me, because in the next part, I'm going to show you exactly how to enter the pause, how to make your observation conscious, how to use quantum entanglement not as a theory, but as a lived practice that changes your biology, your health, your reality. The healing method that saved my life when conventional medicine had given up. The technique that uses the quantum field doctors won't acknowledge to create possibilities your diagnosis says don't exist. This is just the beginning, the foundation, the understanding that must come first. But now that you know quantum entanglement is real, now that you understand your consciousness is connected to every particle in your body, now that you've felt the truth of what they've been hiding, you're ready for what comes next. The practical method, the actual technique, the way to transform understanding into healing. The quantum field is waiting. Your entanglement with infinite possibility is already complete. All that remains is learning to observe it consciously, to collapse the wave function toward health instead of illness, to enter the pause where your power lives. The moment I shifted from understanding to mastering quantum entanglement was the moment everything changed. Let me take you back to a time when my body was failing me. The doctors had run every test imaginable. CAT scans, MRIs, blood panels that read like ancient scrolls of doom. Their verdict was unanimous and delivered with that clinical detachment they perfect in medical school. Irreversible degeneration. Progressive. Untreatable. The kind of words that land like anvils on your chest, crushing the breath out of you. But here's what they didn't account for. I knew the same way you know right now, watching this, that there's more to healing than pills rattling in orange bottles, more than the sterile certainty of prognosis delivered in fluorescent-lit rooms. You've felt it too, haven't you? That deep inner knowing that whispers truths the medical establishment refuses to acknowledge. My body was screaming. Chronic pain that felt like electrical storms racing through my nervous system. Fatigue so profound that some mornings I couldn't lift my head from the pillow without negotiating with my cells for 20 minutes of function. Inflammation markers so high that my blood work resembled a battlefield report. I was 34 years old, and my body was shutting down like a condemned building. The turning point came on a Wednesday. I remember because it was the day I was supposed to start a new medication, one with side effects that sounded worse than my symptoms. I sat on the edge of my bed, pill bottle in hand, and something inside me said no. Not defiance, not desperation, clarity, crystal clear, knowing that there was another way. I'd been studying quantum physics as a mental escape, the double-slit experiment, wave-particle duality, quantum superposition. Scientific concepts that suggested reality was far more fluid than our five senses report. But that Wednesday morning, sitting there with that pill bottle, it clicked. If my consciousness could collapse quantum possibilities in a laboratory setting, proven by decades of peer-reviewed research, why couldn't it collapse the quantum field of my own biological system? That's when I realized my consciousness was already entangled with my cells. Every cell, every molecule, every quantum particle vibrating in the symphony of what I call my body. The separation between observer and observed was an illusion. a trick of perception that the medical model takes as absolute truth. I closed my eyes and did something radical. Instead of visualizing my body as broken, instead of seeing myself as a victim of irreversible processes, I visualized my quantum field, not metaphorically, not as some New Age fantasy. I visualized it as the scientific reality it is, a field of infinite possibility, where particles exist in superposition until consciousness collapses them into specific states. And I felt it. That first moment of true quantum entanglement. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't a warm, fuzzy feeling of spiritual bliss. It was electric, intense, like my entire nervous system had been plugged into a dimension beyond the physical. For exactly 7 seconds, I felt my consciousness merge with my cellular structure at the quantum level. 7 seconds where the boundary between mind and matter dissolved completely. When I opened my eyes, something had shifted. Subtle but undeniable. The inflammation pain in my joints had decreased maybe 10%. Not healed, not cured, but changed. And that change was the proof I needed that I was onto something real. That was day 1. Each day after, I refined the technique. I learned to hold that entangled state longer. 11 seconds, 20 seconds. Eventually, I could maintain quantum entanglement with my cellular structure for 3 full minutes. Think of it like tuning a radio. At first, you catch only static fragments of the signal breaking through interference. But as you adjust the dial with precision, the static fades, and suddenly you're hearing the music clearly. That's what happened with my cellular awareness. Each practice session fine-tuned my consciousness until the connection became crystal clear. And each day, the improvements escalated. The pain decreased by increments that my doctors called spontaneous remission. The fatigue lifted like morning fog, burning off in sunlight. My blood markers began normalizing in ways that made my physician request I retake the tests because surely there had been a lab error. There wasn't. What was happening was quantum entanglement healing. The mastery I developed allowed my consciousness to directly influence the quantum states of my biological system. And by the 40-day mark, I was completely transformed. Not healed in the conventional sense, I had transcended the need for healing by recognizing I was never actually broken, just operating from collapsed quantum possibilities that no longer served my highest expression. Now, you might be thinking this sounds too simple, too good to be true. And I understand that skepticism because I had it too. But here's what ancient masters knew, what Tibetan monks demonstrated through tummo meditation, what Japanese Zen practitioners proved through decades of study, what Sufi mystics understood about the breath as a bridge between worlds. They all recognized that the most profound transformations come through the simplest practices. Not complexity, simplicity, you're special. Not in the participation trophy way our culture throws that word around. Special because you can access quantum healing through consciousness mastery. It's not a gift. It's not bestowed by gurus or unlocked by expensive retreats. It's your birthright as a conscious being operating in a quantum universe. The science backs this up. Quantum biology is demonstrating that biological processes, photosynthesis, enzyme catalysis, even bird navigation operate on quantum principles. Your body is already a quantum system. You just haven't been taught how to consciously entangle with it. Let me give you the exact technique I used. The same one that transformed my biological reality from degenerating to thriving in 40 days. You've invested 14 minutes getting to this point. You've stayed because some part of you recognizes the truth of what I'm sharing. Here's what you do. Find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed for 15 minutes. Sit comfortably with your spine straight. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths, the kind we talked about in the first half, where you're consciously directing the breath rather than letting it happen automatically. Now visualize your quantum field, not as light or energy in the vague sense. Visualize it as a field of probability waves surrounding every cell in your body. These waves contain all possible states your cells could collapse into: healthy, diseased, regenerating, degenerating. All possibilities existing simultaneously in quantum superposition. Here's the key. You are the observer. And in quantum mechanics, the observer doesn't just watch. The observer collapses possibility into actuality through the act of observation. Your consciousness has this power. Not belief, not faith. Measurable, demonstrable quantum mechanical power. Focus on an area of your body that needs healing. Maybe it's your lower back, your digestive system, your heart. Whatever calls for your attention, visualize the quantum field around that area collapsing into the possibility of perfect function. Perfect health, optimal expression. You'll know you're doing it right when you feel a sensation. Some people describe it as tingling, others as warmth. I felt it as electrical intensity, like my cells were suddenly vibrating at a higher frequency. It's like when you've been sitting with your leg crossed too long and the blood flow returns, that pins and needles sensation. Except instead of numbness fading, it's your consciousness awakening to your cellular reality. That sensation is the confirmation. That's your consciousness successfully entangling with your cellular quantum field. Hold that state for as long as you can. In the beginning, you might only manage a few seconds. That's perfect. That's exactly where I started. The quantum field doesn't operate on linear time anyway. Even 7 seconds of true entanglement creates ripple effects that cascade through your entire biological system. You might feel uncertain at first. Maybe you'll wonder if you're doing it right, if anything's actually happening. I felt that too. On day 3, I almost gave up because the sensations were so subtle, I thought I was imagining them. But here's the truth. Your doubt is just your old programming resisting the new possibility you're creating. Stay with it. Do this daily. Same time if possible, because consistency strengthens the entanglement. After 40 days of dedicated practice, you'll have created new neural pathways, new quantum habits. Your consciousness will entangle with your cellular structure more easily, more powerfully, more transformatively. Now this is what ancient masters knew. The Tibetan monks who could raise their body temperature through meditation. The yogis who could slow their heartbeat to near death and revive themselves. The shamanic traditions that spoke of shape-shifting and cellular transformation. They were all describing quantum entanglement mastery, just without the scientific language to explain the mechanism. Modern quantum physics has now validated what these traditions practiced for millennia. Your consciousness is not separate from your biology. It's fundamentally entangled with it at the deepest level of physical reality. And once you master this entanglement, healing isn't something you seek from external sources. It's something you direct from within. But here's what most people miss. This isn't a one-time practice. Quantum entanglement with your cellular structure requires ongoing dedication. Your consciousness is like water shaping stone. One drop does nothing, but consistent flow over time, it carves canyons. You've spent decades, maybe your entire life, unconsciously collapsing quantum possibilities into patterns of stress, inflammation, and degeneration. Your cells have become entangled with fear-based consciousness, scarcity thinking, and the belief that your body is a machine that inevitably breaks down. Rewiring that takes commitment. A 40-day practice isn't magic. It's the minimum time required for your consciousness to establish new quantum patterns. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. Quantum biology calls it quantum coherence. I call it mastering your own biological destiny. And here's where it gets even more profound. Once you master basic quantum entanglement healing, the technique I just shared, there's a second level. An advanced practice that accelerates results exponentially. I'm developing content around this now because thousands of people have joined this quantum healing community and many are ready for deeper mastery. This advanced technique involves not just collapsing your personal quantum field, but entangling with the larger quantum field that connects all consciousness. What some traditions call the unified field. What physicists call quantum non-locality. When you access this level, you're no longer just healing yourself. You're tapping into healing intelligence that transcends individual biological systems. The practitioners who've reached this level report experiences that sound impossible. Spontaneous remission of conditions doctors declared terminal. Rapid regeneration of tissues that shouldn't be possible at their age. Some have even reported feeling entangled with the consciousness of others, able to facilitate healing in people they've never physically met. I know how that sounds. I know it pushes the boundaries of what conventional thinking accepts. But we're not here for conventional thinking, are we? You didn't invest 17 minutes of your attention to hear the same recycled medical model that's already failed you. You're here because you recognize that reality is more fluid, more responsive to consciousness, more quantum than the materialist paradigm admits. This community we're building, it's not just people watching videos. It's a collective of consciousness explorers who understand that we're living in a quantum universe where observer and observed are fundamentally entangled, where consciousness isn't an accident of neurochemistry, but the primary force that collapses infinite possibility into experienced reality. You're part of something significant here, not because I'm special, but because you are. Because you possess the same quantum mechanical power I discovered. The same power ancient masters cultivated. The same power that cutting-edge quantum biology is now proving exists in every conscious being. So where do we go from here? Today, right now, I'm completely healed. Not cured by external intervention, but transformed by internal mastery. My blood work is perfect. My energy is limitless. The pain that once dominated my existence is a distant memory. And this transformation is available to you, not because I'm giving it to you, because you're remembering what you've always had the capacity to access. You felt the truth of this before I even explained the mechanism, didn't you? That's not coincidence. That's your quantum consciousness recognizing its own nature reflected back. You now understand what ancient masters knew and modern quantum physics confirms. The bridge between consciousness and cellular reality isn't locked behind medical gatekeepers or patented molecules. It exists within your own awareness, in your ability to consciously entangle with your cellular structure and collapse probability waves into states of optimal function. This knowledge transforms how you relate to your body, not as a machine subject to entropy, but as a quantum system responsive to observation. Not as powerless against biology, but as the conscious observer who shapes it. This is existential liberation. Freedom from the terror that your body will betray you. That disease is random, that suffering is inevitable. None of that is true in a quantum universe where consciousness and matter are fundamentally entangled. If this understanding resonates with you, consider beginning tonight. The 40-day quantum entanglement practice I shared, 15 minutes of conscious observation, visualizing your quantum field, feeling your consciousness collapsing possibility into healing. Notice the sensation that confirms successful entanglement. This isn't casual entertainment. This is a path from unconscious biological experience to conscious quantum awareness. The choice to begin is yours. If you felt that electric sensation of your consciousness merging with your cellular structure during this journey, share your experience in the comments. The community that gathers here connects through these breakthrough moments practitioners on the same path of quantum mastery. While the practice is individual, the journey is collective. We're all consciousness exploring itself through quantum mechanics. For those drawn to explore deeper dimensions of this practice, I'm developing advanced techniques. The practices that accelerate quantum entanglement beyond the 40-day foundation. How to access the unified field. How to maintain quantum coherence under stress. How to entangle your consciousness with healing intelligence that transcends individual biology. If this resonates, join this community by subscribing and turning on notifications. What I share here bridges ancient wisdom and modern quantum science knowledge designed for those ready to remember their power. Next, we'll explore the advanced quantum ritual that master practitioners use to deepen cellular entanglement. The technique that transforms occasional practice into permanent quantum coherence. If you've begun to feel the shift, the next level awaits. You're here because your consciousness recognizes this truth. Because you've reached a quantum inflection point where the old paradigm no longer serves your evolution. The separation between observer and observed was always an illusion. You are the conscious creator of your biological reality, operating in a universe where everything is fundamentally entangled. The transformation has already begun.